With an uncertain future for the Godzilla franchise, Toho brought back much of the original team for the final explosive matchup, a Godzilla film to end all Godzilla films. Here, they would bring back all of the monsters from the previous movies and pit them against each other in one final epic monster brawl. If this were to be the last Godzilla movie, it would be suitably monstrous in Ishiro Honda's 1968 film, Destroy All Monsters.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham, and I am back with Chris. And Chris, today we are doing 1968's Destroy All Monsters. And I'm going to get right into it and ask you what you think of this film in the Godzilla franchise.
I like this one a lot. It has maybe arguably inflated reputation because it's called Destroy All Monsters and it has this kind of legendary status as this huge monster ensemble. I'm not sure if it quite lives up to the legends, but I do like this movie a lot. I do think it's part of the upper echelon of the franchise of certainly of this Showa era of the franchise.
Yeah, I like this one too. I did have kind of a rough watch of it. I don't find the characters or really any of the characters too intriguing, or any of the story with the characters too intriguing, with like the Kilax and another alien type species. But all the monster stuff in this is gold. So I mean, this is the first film. I know this might not be correct in Godzilla lore, but this is the first film I actually found the characters kind of somewhat boring, or what they were doing boring, and then finding myself waiting for the monster action.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd say that's probably fair. It definitely feels a bit more like a plot-driven movie, and it doesn't feel very character-driven. The characters are kind of just serving roles in the plot, and so there's not a lot of character drama and characters moving through and driving things. It feels very much like it's all driven by this alien invasion, and it's just humans sort of reacting to it, which, your mileage varies on how well that works. I enjoyed it because I did like I think it keeps a pretty good pace. I do like the way they sprinkle and spread and pace out the monster action throughout. It's interesting. We talk a little bit about how Son of Godzilla kind of felt like a better sort of remake or retread of the concept of Ebirah Horror of the Deep, where that was kind of an island movie, and then Son of Godzilla was an island movie that seemed like it did a lot of things better. And I know this might be a controversial statement, but for me, this feels a bit like that for Invasion of Astro Monster. The human characters aren't as interesting. The human characters aren't as good. But in all of the other categories, in terms of just the way they execute the alien plot, the aliens kind of being these kind of like worm things that are invading human bodies, and the heavier monster action and things like that, for me personally, this is kind of like the Invasion of Astro Monsters remake, but kind of on steroids as far as the monster action goes.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and get right into it with Destroy All Monsters is a 1968 Japanese kaiju film, which for all these Toho Godzilla films, they're going to hear me say it's a yada yada year Japanese kaiju film. So anyone listening, get used to that. It is It was directed by Ishiro Honda with special effects by Satomasa Arikawa and supervised by Eiji Tsuburaya. The film was produced and distributed by Toho. It's the 9th film in the Godzilla franchise, and it features 11 monster characters, including Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, King Ghidorah, Anguirus, and Manila. And the film stars Akira Kubo, Jun Tazaki, Yukiko Kobayashi, and Yushio Shuchiya. I believe that's how that's pronounced. It was
I'm not
released.
about to correct you.
Yeah, that one was Shuchiya is what I'm getting out of it. So if I'm wrong, please somebody feel free to comment on that. It was released theatrically in Japan on August 1st, 1968. It was also released by American International Pictures with an English language dub in the United States on May 23rd, 1969. Contemporary American reviews were mixed, with praise mainly held for the climactic monster battle, and retrospectively the film has received more praise and is considered a favorite among Godzilla fans for its audacious and simple story and innovative action sequences and a memorable booming score by Akira Ifukube, which I cannot disagree. I do like that Ifukube is back on this one, and we get a little bit more from him. The last couple, to me, although they've been good, they just can't touch the themes and the soundtracks that Ifukube does.
Yeah, this one, as we go on in the discussion, this one is definitely a return to form in more ways than one for the franchise, and I think that's why even more people see it in a bit of a positive light.
Yeah, and it's with the monster designs and everything that we're gonna get into. There's a lot to talk about with this film, especially when it comes to monsters and the score. But I'll get into the trailer for the film. We can talk about the plot synopsis, and then I'll come back and I'll give you some fun facts or behind the scenes facts, we'll say, because I found quite a bit for this film that I thought you might find interesting or just fun in its own little way for a film that's 50 some odd years old.
Yeah, I'm always up for some good trivia.
All right, well, I'll get right into the trailer and we'll be back with that.
I would say nobody has anything to fear from us. But we are going to control you now. It is the same spaceship you saw near the moon. That should convince you we do not come from your world. We are here to make you our slaves.
From the laboratories and arsenals of all civilized nations, the most powerful, the newest, the most devastating of weapons blast into action in their effort to destroy all monsters.
At the close of the 20th century, All of the Earth's kaiju have been collected by the United Nations Science Committee and confined in an area known as Monsterland, located in the Asagawara Island chain. A special control center is constructed underneath the island to ensure that the monsters stay secure and to serve as a research facility to study them. When communications with Monsterland are suddenly and mysteriously severed, and all of the monsters begin attacking world capitals, Dr. Yoshida of the UNSC orders Captain Yamabe and the crew of his spaceship Moonlight SY-3 to investigate Asagawara. There, they discover that the scientists, led by Dr. Otani, have become mind-controlled slaves of a feminine alien race identifying themselves as the Kilax, who reveal that they are in control of the monsters. Their leader demands that the human race surrender or face total annihilation. Godzilla attacks New York City, Rodan invades Moscow, Mothra lays waste to Beijing, Gorosaurus destroys Paris, and Manda attacks London. The attacks were set into motion to draw attention away from Japan, so that the aliens can establish an underground stronghold near Mount Fuji. The Kilax then turn their next major attack onto Tokyo, and without serious opposition, become arrogant in their arms until the UNSC discover, after recovering the Kilax monster mind control devices from around the world, that they have switched to broadcasting the control signals from their base under the moon's surface. In a desperate battle, the crew of the SY-3 destroys the Kilax lunar outpost and returns the alien control system to Earth. With all of the monsters under the control of the UNSC, the Kilax call King Ghidorah, who is dispatched to protect the alien stronghold at Mount Fuji, battling Godzilla, Manila, Mothra, Rodan, Gorosaurus, Anguirus, Kumonga, and Varan. While seemingly invincible, King Ghidorah is eventually overpowered by the combined strength of the Earth monsters and is killed. Refusing to admit defeat, the Kilax produce their ace, a burning monster they call the Fire Dragon, which begins to torch Tokyo and destroys the control center on Asagawara. Suddenly, Godzilla attacks and destroys the Kilax underground base, revealing that the Earth's monsters instinctively know who their enemies are. Captain Yamabe then pursues the Fire Dragon in the SY-3 and narrowly achieves victory for the human race. The Fire Dragon is revealed to be a flaming Kilax saucer and is destroyed. The Kilax defeated, Godzilla and the other monsters eventually return to Monsterland to live in peace. Alright, Chris, I'll go into some fun facts for you here, because like I said, I got quite a few that I found interesting, and being a fellow Godzilla fan, I figured you might enjoy as well.
Yeah, let's let them rip.
Special effects director Sadamasa Arikara noted that Toho, they were going to potentially end the Godzilla series, as producer Tanaka figured that all the ideas had just run out, they had used them up. And several sources attest that the film was announced alongside Son of Godzilla, possibly as a competing project. This film was written by Takeshi Kimura and Ishiro Honda, making it the first Godzilla film since Godzilla Raids Again, not written by Shinichi Sekizawa. The first initial screenplay preliminary, titled Monster Total Advancement Order by Takashi Kimura, was submitted on November 22, 1967, and included a confirmed roster of Godzilla, the Mothra larva, King Ghidorah, Rodan, Baragon, Varan, Kumonga, Manda, Maguma, and Ebra. Everything plays out just as it does in this film, except that Maguma and Baragon guard the Kilax base, and Baragon actually attacks Paris. And then also in this iteration, Varan and Rodan work in tandem to attack King Ghidorah in the final battle.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, there's some long ones here that I found. Eiji Tsuburaya was always getting letters from kids asking to see a real monster, so he arranged for Toho to invite to the studio around 100 kids who would be entering the first grade. Entrance into grade school involves a special ceremony to welcome the kids, so this lucky bunch got to see all the monsters on set rather than endure the usual boring speeches from school officials. So on March 26, 1968, the kids assembled at the Mount Fuji set on stage 11 and were entertained by all 11 monsters, and were also greeted by stars Akira Kubo and Jun Tazaki.
My God. Talk about some lucky kids.
Yeah, that would be fun. You're going into first grade and you get to see all these monsters or actors in their suits, of a movie that's huge where you're from, or a series of films.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
At the climactic battle at Mount Fuji, Hiro Nakajima wanted Godzilla to reprise his jumping role from the Invasion of Astro Monster, but Ishiro Honda removed it from the final film.
Ah, that's interesting. I wonder if they actually filmed it or if it was just something that Nakajima wanted to do and Honda shot down. Like if like how crazy would it be if that footage is in a vault somewhere if it wasn't destroyed, That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, or because Godzilla, he's stomping on King Ghidorah's head, so why not have him do his little jumping stuff while he's stomping? So every other jump, each foot is landing on King Ghidorah's throat or neck.
That'd be interesting. Or they could have had a thing where maybe they have Minya do it as a tribute to when Godzilla did it. That would be interesting.
That would have. That is a good point. I didn't think of that one.
It would kind of it would maybe taste go down a little bit easier seeing the kid Godzilla do it instead of the adult Godzilla. He's allowed to be a little more silly.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering that this is a little more on the more serious side of the last couple films, but still a childish film, having little Godzilla, yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one, that they could have had him do it and it would have been just fine. All right, so new monster suits for Godzilla and Anguirus were constructed for the film, while Rodan, Kumonga, Manila, Gorosaurus, Manda, Baragon, Mothra, and King Ghidorah suits were modified from previous films, with King Ghidorah having less detail in this film than he had in all the other previous films.
Yeah, some of that kind of shows there's a joke that one podcast I listened to once made about the Rodan suit in this movie looking like it was like left in a hot car over the summer because the beak looks like it's melted down, like it's almost like sliding downwards like it was melted. So like they make this joke about Rodan looking like it was left in a hot car, and every time I see the movie I just think of that.
Yeah, it almost looks like his suit's kind of hanging off or melting, just getting old and beat up. There were 3 different scales of the Moonlight SY3 created for this film. The largest was a 1 meter, 3 foot long, used mainly for shots of the spaceship flying across the surface of the moon, landing and taking off, and for the battle with the fire dragon or the Kelex UFO. For the scene when Gorosaurus comes out of the ground through a tunnel, which was presumably dug by Baragon under the Arc de Triomphe, the floor of the set was 6.5 feet above the ground with the arc built on top of it. A forklift was actually brought in under the set of the monster, or Gorosaurus was put on the forklift, and then they raised him up through the ground by raising the forklift.
That's interesting. God, it's always fascinating how they pulled off all of these effects and destruction scenes in camera with models and sets and physical rigging. It's always impressive.
Yeah, because they you don't think it's how it was actually done. Like when you find out that it was done with a forklift, you're like, that's the last thing I would have thought of.
Yeah, and it and when you're not thinking of it, you don't think about the nuts and bolts of it when you're watching the movie. It's a testament to how well the effects kind of sell. Even being outdated and old, they're still incredibly convincing for their time.
Yeah, for sure. I got 2 more for you, so I'm almost done here. The fire trap set by the Kelex to trap the Moonlight SY3 used real flamethrowers with fire retardant materials were used in the rock walls in the crater. And then this was my favorite one, because this I feel like would have been awesome, but it never happened. 2014, Godzilla's director Gareth Edwards expressed interest in making a sequel to his 2014 movie inspired by Destroy All Monsters. So I think that that could have been fun if it would have happened, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if they necessarily would have made the very next movie a Destroy All Monsters movie, but I think if they hadn't leaned toward the Godzilla versus Kong direction, I could have seen maybe a trilogy of Godzilla movies where the second one would have been King of the Monsters, and maybe the third one you kind of graduate further to Destroy All Monsters. I could see a scenario like that happening.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. After Godzilla King of the Monsters, maybe he fights one more dominant monster or something, and then a couple more older Japanese kaiju come back in that one, maybe a Megalon or a Baragon or something, and then we get a movie another 3 years after that, where it's all right, destroy all monsters. They one of the monsters turned, and now the government is just like, nope, screw this, we're going to destroy them all.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and I personally, I don't rule out the idea that the MonsterVerse, Legendary, who makes those films, like they kind of keep their finger on the pulse a little bit. I don't rule out that they'll get around to the Destroy All Monsters concept. Maybe just a name and general kind of monster ensemble concept, not maybe necessarily this exact plot, but I could see that scenario. I could see sort of the ultimate villain of a Destroy All Monsters movie being Destroya, just because it feels on brand. But so I don't think we'll never see that. I think we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and with this, what is it, the Godzilla X Kong, the new Empire, Godzilla N Kong, if you want to say. I'm super curious of how that's going to unfold, because will it have an end credits scene leading into something else? We know Godzilla vs Kong didn't, but Kong Skull Island had the end credits scene, and Godzilla King of the Monsters had the end credits scene. So we kind of knew we were getting another one. But
Yeah.
will this one be
Yeah.
the last one in the series, or will it make enough money to, all right, let's warrant another sequel because we're still making buku dollars, or however
Yeah.
much they need to make.
Yeah, I think they're kind of taking it just kind of one at a time at this point. I don't know anything about the intricate details of the licensing contracts and production contracts and all that stuff, but I would say more or less they're probably doing one movie at a time. Put a movie out, if it's successful, go for another one. Put a movie out, if it's successful, go for another one. I don't think they're going to get too far ahead of themselves as far as planning out, a trilogy of Godzilla and Kong movies or some crazy spin-offs or anything like that. I think they just might take it one at a time.
Yeah, it's not going to be a Marvel where there's 3 or 4 released a year.
Yeah, and honestly, like people say that would be great, but I wouldn't want that anyways. I feel like that'd probably just bring the quality down and create chances for more of it to be terrible or flop and potentially ruin the franchise. Like, give me one great movie every couple of years.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that because it's 2 or 3 a year, you're going to get wore out. Marvel can do it because there's so many different characters. Unless you're bringing in, this year in February we had the Mothra origin story, and now in November we have the Baragon or another monster's origin story, and then we have a versus movie next year, and then another couple origin stories in 2 years, and they could do it that way, but they never will.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I could see a scenario of maybe one movie a year, or maybe one movie every 2 years instead of one movie every 3 years. I could see them, moving it along a little bit, but and I think time has proven that multiple movies and multiple TV shows a year for Marvel. I think time's showing that people are getting burned out by that, and people are just skipping more and more of it, and just kind of ignoring what's not interesting and only watching what captures their interest. And you never want to make part of your franchise feel like the skippable part of the franchise.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I do not want a Godzilla movie every year. Like I say I do, but if it's going to be a phenomenal film with awesome special effects, a good score, good characters, I'll wait for one every 3 or 4 years and be happy with it.
Yeah, or maybe maybe the way we get a Godzilla movie every year is like, hey, Legendary makes a MonsterVerse movie, and then the next year Toho makes one of their own Godzilla movies, and so you're getting one a year, but it's not necessarily in the same franchise and in the same series, so it's kind of going back and forth. Like that's totally reasonable.
Yup, for sure. And before we get too far off topic, I was gonna say that, and in those 3 or 4 years in between, I'll just keep going back to these older Godzilla movies, that everything that we have so far, and continue watching them just like we are here with Destroy All Monsters. I watched this yesterday for the podcast, and my little girl, she's got her own little, like, almost like a beanbag chair, and she was sitting there right along watching it with me, sitting in her chair.
That's excellent. That's just awesome.
Got to teach them young on this stuff.
Exactly. And like you said, we have no shortage of supply of past Godzilla lore and history and movies to watch. We've got coming up on 70 years of content, so it's not like we need them to start ramping out an insane output of new material. We've got plenty of stuff to marinate with.
Yeah, we don't need another Showa era, because like we've talked about on episodes, it just seems like they got burned out. They started reusing footage from other films, and it's just 15. What was it? 15 movies in 21 years. That's almost insane. That's Marvel numbers.
That's a pretty good pace, and that's not counting the non-Godzilla kaiju movies that Toho was making. You throw those in, and it's probably closer to 30, maybe more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, with Mothra and all of them, yeah, I 100% could see 30. But talking, since we're on monsters and Toho, I'll get back to this one, and I think I'm gonna start this one with monster design with you. We'll go a different route.
Yeah, it's a heavy roster, so I'm all for it.
Oh, it's definitely a heavy roster. Godzilla. I mean, in my mind, I can't really say too much about this design. We've seen it in past films. I think it's an upgrade from Ebra and Son of Godzilla. I like when he's supposedly attacking, what is it, New York in this one. Um, I like how he looks next to the models. The models don't look the realest in this film compared to some past, but it might be just the camera angle, how it looks from how it was filmed. But I do like the way Godzilla looks in this one. Mothra larva, she's the same. I don't know. There's a couple in here that are the same, but we'll talk about them. What did you think about Godzilla? I know I gave my opinion on it.
Yeah, it seems that they made it a little more fierce than in the face, kind of than Son of Godzilla. Son of Godzilla kind of had a very, or at least it felt like a kind of overtly, and maybe it's more of a psychology thing. I'm not exactly pulling up exact images and cross comparing, but it feels a little less silly than the Son of Godzilla look, while still kind of having that shape, that design, that silhouette, that longer neck, those kind of proportions. But this one feels a little more raw, a little bit.
I feel like the way he looks in this one, and then going to the next one, he in All Monsters Attack or Godzilla's Revenge, they go back to the Son of Godzilla design almost in that one, as into where this Godzilla design we see move forward in like Godzilla vs. Gigan and so on. But you can tell in each film he looks different, just very slightly, just very little things that they've done to the suit, and eventually we see that the suit's falling apart and that they just didn't have the money to replace it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you're just kind of watching movie to movie, some of these later 60s movies, you're not really overtly noticing the differences film to film, but then all of a sudden you get to a movie like Destroy All Monsters, and it's like, well, he doesn't look anything like he looked in Mothra versus Godzilla. The changes kind of film to film are kind of small enough that you're not really, it's not wildly jumping out at you. Maybe one aspect, this aspect, the snout, the face, the neck, but then before you know it, it's like, wow, this Godzilla really doesn't look anything like he did just a few movies ago.
Yeah, and like I said, I like the way he looks in this one. I wasn't a fan of the way he looked, like you said, with the long neck. I'm not a big fan of that, but like in Son of Godzilla with like the smush face, and I don't know kind of what you could say, what kind of animal he looked like. I can't think off the top of my head, but
The way that people always kind of joke that it's kind of like a frog head with like the way the eyes are positioned, like in the back, like kind of like a cartoon version of how you'd see a frog kind of be drawn and animated.
okay, now that you say that, I do remember hearing that about that Godzilla, but I like this design leaps and bounds above Son of Godzilla, even though the differences are pretty much minor, but there's
They're
just certain
important.
designs that you can tell that it's just a better look and a better design. So a Mothra, she's the same. She's a little larval turd, as people like to call her. She's nothing different about her. King Ghidorah, the faces in this one are a little different than in like Astro Monster, or it must be just a different close-up angle. I'm not sure, but
It's hard
Ghidorah
to
looks a
tell.
little different.
Yeah, but it's always cool to see Ghidorah back.
Oh yeah, you can't. I mean, and
It
we
the color,
definitely get Ghidorah back for more films.
yeah, the colorization, and this could be like a sort of the status of the transfers of the movies and the print quality of the movies, but the gold of Ghidorah felt a little lighter in this one. Maybe not as dark, but again, that might not be inherent to the movie itself. That might be sort of the quality of the presentation.
Yeah, it might have, it might have been the suit. How it said in the behind the scenes or the fun facts that they didn't pay or add as much detail to it. The suit was getting older, so they might not have just put a lot of money into it, and
Just
now the colors faded and it wasn't repainted or something per se.
yeah, or painted over, but with a lighter colorization. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't find anything about that. Just that in this film it had less detail. So I guess that's what I'm gonna go with for that one.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
We have Gorosaurus, which is this is the first time that monster has shown up in a Godzilla film.
Yes.
It was in King Kong Escapes prior, I believe.
Yeah, and it sort of served the role of the T Rex in that movie. King Kong kind of has the battle with it, messes up its mouth and jaw in kind of the way that he always seems to do with the T Rexes or the V Rexes or whatever. So it sort of served that role in that movie. So long story short, because that movie was made in 1967 and they were using every suit they had available, they pulled Gorosaurus over for this one.
Okay, and I don't blame him. I'm not against Gorosaurus's design. It's not terrible. Just looks like a dinosaur. Suit
Yeah,
that was made back when.
yeah, and and when I was a kid, my line of thinking was like, oh, like Gorosaurus is what Godzilla would have looked like without all the radiation. That was always kind of like the way I looked at it as a kid. Like that's Godzilla before he mutated, kind of a thing. That's what species he was, and then he mutated, and we got the Godzilla we know.
Okay, I like that train of thought. I can say I never thought that way. I guess I didn't have my brain working as in like, yeah, this is a Godzilla species without the radiation.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's little kid stuff. You're kind of, when I was a little kid, I was just like always obsessed with things like that. Once the Heisei movie showed like a pre-radiation Godzilla, I'm like, well, what does the other Godzilla look like before the radiation? And like you see Gorosaurus, it's like, oh, that's good enough. That's it.
Yeah, for sure. I can't disagree. In a kid's mind, we have to make sense of something or make it make sense.
Source's appearance in this one, it's a fun role. He gets his moments, and he's pretty much never seen again.
Yeah, we get a nice little drop kick.
Yeah, the kangaroo kick. Yeah,
That is the highlight of the film for Gorosaurus.
yeah, that's where he peaks right there.
All right, who else do we got? Amanda. There's so many in this one. We don't really see Amanda too much. Kind of a plain design. I don't really have anything to say about it. It's not terrible. I don't technically. Do you know technically what Manda is? Is it I never I never looked into it if it was like some kind of like snake figure because it's got like the little teeny little
Got the
leg.
legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got the legs like a sort of like a traditional Chinese dragon kind of a look. Uh, what's the movie that Manda first appeared in? Was Atragon. I've never seen that movie. I've never seen the original movie that Manda appeared in, so I don't really have a greater context. But it does seem very much inspired by a sort of giant snake mixed with a Chinese dragon kind of look. Um, so yeah, I mean it's a cool monster. It's a cool design. It gets this great little moment where it's wrapping around the the bridge or the railway in the city attack. That's not New York City. That's Tokyo. But it's a good moment.
Yeah, for sure. And then, oh boy, we got what, Rodan? He's in. I love the scene in the beginning where he's diving for the dolphins.
Yeah,
That
yes, that's a great moment.
that's what my daughter when I first put it on, she was locked in on that scene, and I was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna let you sit in your chair. She was eating like a little yogurt thing, and I'm like, hey, awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was fun. Like getting the sort of the Planet Earth style documentary of the monsters at the beginning of the movie was kind of fun. Just seeing them kind of interacting with their habitat.
Yeah, and to know how oh, if these monsters try to leave, we got this, it's almost like a poison gas that prevents them from going anywhere.
Yeah, they're on lockdown. Yeah.
So we have Anguirus' second appearance in the Godzilla franchise, and I will say he is much improved. I like this classic design of Anguirus very much.
Yeah, and this is sort of the codified appearance, because whether it's the same suit or not, this is very much how Anguirus carries forward in his future appearances in this franchise. So yeah, he gets that sort of new and improved look, and this is sidekick Anguirus. This isn't Godzilla's nemesis Anguirus.
Yeah, I love Sidekick Anguirus. I wish they would have brought him back so far for the MonsterVerse. I truly thought in Godzilla King of the Monsters, when we got the first trailers for it, when the monster is coming out of the ground, I was like, Anguirus! I was super geeked and excited, and then I was like, damn, that's not him. That's disappointing.
Yeah, and the thing is that like something like that, like with the age of the internet, it's like you'd probably hear about the deal being made in the same way that they announced like Mothra, King Ghidorah, Rodan. It's like you probably would hear about the deal being made for Anguirus to be in the movie, and so like it, like you probably wouldn't be allowed to be surprised by it. You'd hear about it 10 years before the movie comes out, and then you're just expecting it. But yeah, Anguirus is an old throwback that like he's kind of in that middle range where it's not obvious to put Anguirus in one of these movies, but he's way above some of the other minor monsters. He's like right in the middle there, and it's like like throw him in a new movie, put some respect on him.
Yeah, I'd love to see a design for a newer Anguirus, what they could come up with. I almost would have rather had him than Rodan. I'm a bigger Anguirus fan than I am Rodan, but the design they came up with Rodan for the 2019, phenomenal in my mind. But that's another story for another day. Last on this list for monster design we'll talk about is Kumonga is back, and I'm not sure if it was the same puppet or puppeteers managing it, but Kumonga looks the same. Still looks good in my eyes.
I think some of those shots might even be stock footage, possibly. Now, I don't have that in writing anywhere, but just like the angle, it feels like that sort of like stock angle that you always see of Kumanga, you know?
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one because
So maybe it
knowing
is, maybe it isn't. There certainly wouldn't be any reason for them to not be able to get new footage of it for this movie, you know? So, but yeah, Kumanga's there for a small little role in the final battle.
yeah, knowing these films, you never. I mean, stock footage was hugely reused through kind of the middle of the Showa era and on, so I wouldn't put it past him at all.
Yeah, and Minya's back looking essentially the same as he did in the previous movie.
Uglier than ever.
Yeah, and if my memory serves me right, Minya was not in any of the sort of opening montages or earlier parts of the movie. If I'm remembering right, he first appears right at the end when he shows up for the final battle. Right, we don't see him at any point before that.
I believe so. I believe you're
Yeah,
100% correct on
that was
that.
always interesting. So it's like a little surprise appearance because they don't really build him up to be there. So, Son of Godzilla is sort of essential viewing for this movie. You kind of need that intro movie to make sense of his appearance here.
Yeah, because I feel like you said, they had the suit laying around, so they were like, oh, you know what? Let's throw him in. It says destroy all monsters. You know what? Let's just put him in there.
Yeah, half of the monsters in this movie were used in very recent years before this movie came out. They were using all of the suits that they had on hand and refurbishing what they had to and things of that nature.
Yeah, trying to go out, thinking this is our last Godzilla movie. Let's go out with a bang. Let's bring everybody that we have on the roster, almost like a Royal Rumble in wrestling. If they have it at the end of the year or something, let's go out with a bang.
Hmm.
But I'll get into some numbers for you real quick. I added like two things to the numbers, and then I did find a couple other things that I added. So, Destroy All Monsters had a budget of roughly 200 million yen and received an attendance of 2.58 million. The film was reissued theatrically in Japan in 1972, where it was re-edited by Honda to a 74-minute runtime and released with the title Godzilla Lightning Fast Strategy.
That's funny. It's like chopping the movie down to 70 something minutes. Like that sure as heck would be a lightning fast version of the movie.
Yeah, because I watched it yesterday, and when I clicked the display or paused it, I think it said that it was 89 minutes. So, I mean, you took 15 minutes out of it, and
Yeah.
you're not going to edit the final battle. So, you're
Yeah.
taking human characters out.
Yeah, and even at 89 minutes, that's already a pretty brisk pace for a Godzilla movie, especially one with a few, because you get the montage of the monsters at the beginning on the island, then Godzilla attacking New York, and then Godzilla, Amanda, Mothra, and Rodan all I think it's Tokyo that they attack, and then your big monster mash with King Ghidorah. You get several kind of big monster sequences in this movie for an under 90-minute movie.
Yeah, I don't remember it being that short, but I mean, for an 89-minute movie, for me, it kind of dragged a little bit for, like I said, the human characters. But once we got to the monster action, that last 20 minutes, the final battle and everything, it zoomed by. 20 minutes felt like five.
Yeah, I one thing I do like about this one is that after you could tell with Invasion of Astro Monster, Ebra, Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, you can tell that they were starting to skimp on some things. Astro Monster used a bit more stock footage, kind of had barely any screen time for the monsters. Ebra and Son of Godzilla were both set on islands, no city destruction, no big military battles, sort of scaled down. And this is like a great return to form. Like you get tanks upon tanks just like laying in and firing missiles, and you just get some really big standout destruction sequences that we had not seen for several movies at this point, and so it's a real good return to form. You can tell that they definitely spent a little more on this one than the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was nice to see that we're not on a island again, and like you said, we have the tanks and Godzilla battling the tanks and destroying cities and stuff. So it was nice to see that if this was the last one, or if they really truly did think this was the last one, they tried to go out with a bang and spend a little extra money on it.
Yeah, and considering where they went, maybe it would have been okay to let it rest for at least a few years after this one, but money always talks, so they made more. But I mean, it certainly has a bit of a finale feeling to it with how much money they're putting on the screen.
Yeah, for sure. But with you saying money talks, that leads me into my next point because that perfectly goes into this. This film continued the decline in ticket sales in Japan for the Godzilla series, with this one earning only 2.6 million in ticket sales, while in comparison, Invasion of Astro Monster brought in 3.8 million, and Son of Godzilla collected 2.5 million in ticket sales. So it didn't make as much money, but yet they still continued like, okay, we're gonna make another one, and then another one, and they even though they were declining, they continued making the films.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, considering where they go with the next one, I think maybe the thought process behind this one was to shell out and have kind of a big kind of finale. I can see how they probably thought the Destroy All Monsters concept would really make it an event, and then maybe when it didn't, the turnout wasn't quite as strong. They're like, okay, we can make money off of these things, but we have to seriously limit how much we're spending for them to still be making the money we want to make off of them. So then you get the movie we get next after this, which is sort of, you know, stock footage central and an island story and like 69 minutes and so it's wild.
Yeah, and considering the bringing up like the money that this film earned, the budget for it was 200 million yen, which I did find the equivalent for that to 2019. That was just under 730 million yen, and the box office return was only 170 million yen, which would have been equivalent to 620 million yen in 2019. So this film actually lost money in the box office, and they still made another one.
Wow, that's interesting. And I mean, it's a shame because I mean, like I said, I know some mileage varies and different opinions happen, but for me, I'm like, you think about a movie like Invasion of Astro Monster, I'm like, for me, this one delivers the goods a lot more than that movie. Like, I'll never argue that the human characters and plot in this one are superior to that one. But I mean, I like the way it does the entire invasion storyline better. I kind of like the concept of the Kilax better than the Planet X people. I dig the monster roster and the action and the scope and the scale of it. Like, I kind of like all these things about it more than that one. But a few years down the road, the franchise becoming stale, you can't get people to keep turning up.
Yeah, it's hard to year after year without you're only taking a year break or less technically, to keep them coming back and keep people interested. Because I mean, even here, with the most successful franchises, I used to love the Fast and the Furious franchise, and I used to love seeing them. And now, they don't even come out every year. They're every couple of years, and I'm still nowadays just like, I'm good. I'll wait until it comes out on Blu-ray or 4K,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I'll save my money.
Yeah, they sort of, you can see the numbers. They peaked with the seventh, and then eighth made less than that, ninth made less than that, sixth or 10th making less than that. It's diminishing returns at this point. They're still making enough to keep going, but they absolutely peaked at number 7, and they're not going to reclaim those heights.
Absolutely not. But I won't go into that. I'll give you a couple of my last numbers here. Destroy All Monsters has a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, with an average rating of 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. I added a couple. This has a 3.3 out of 5 rating on Letterboxd, and 92% of Google users who voted liked this film.
There you go. There you go.
Godzilla is on screen for 8 minutes and 29 seconds, or 10% of the film, and his first appearance is just under 3.5 minutes into the film, or 4% into the film. So he shows up pretty quick.
Yeah, that's some stats you like to see. When Godzilla has 10% screen time of the movie, and it's a movie with 11 monsters in it, or whatever, those are some stats you like to hear.
Yeah, I like knowing and trying to look and like compare different websites that I find for like the Godzilla screen time. And from what I've found, they're usually within a couple seconds of each other. It's nothing too dramatic. It's like 2 or 3 seconds. So for 8 minutes and 29 seconds, or 10% of the film, I think another site I found was like 8 minutes and 31 seconds. So
yeah, okay. So you're essentially in the same spot then.
Yeah, for sure. And as long as Godzilla's on screen for a good portion of the film, I'm not going to complain.
And like we said, there's he's among many other monsters in this movie, so it's not like it's only him.
For sure. But enough talk about monsters for now. I'll go into asking you if you had a favorite character in this film. I know we both said that the characters in this film are not the strong suit of it.
Yeah, I will say that the human drama and action in this movie is not of a high point. I mean, it's tough to say. Oh gosh, what was the character's name who is briefly like under the mind control of the monster and they rip her earrings out? What was her character's name? Was that Kyoko? Kyoko. Okay, yes. Okay, so Kyoko, who gets sort of, she's evil for a portion of the movie. They rip her earrings out. I just liked seeing her character kind of start off kind of nice and sweet, and then kind of go into this like evil mode, that sort of mind controlled kind of aspect. Like, to me, that was the most interesting thing about the human stuff. A lot of the other humans in the movie were just sort of generic talking heads, but I liked her dynamic.
Yeah, I chose Dr. Yoshido. He wasn't really a standout, this is probably the hardest it's been to pick a favorite character, was this film for me. I guess I don't really have a reason why he's my favorite. I think it's because he's a past character, and he came back for another Godzilla film, and I liked him in other films, so that kind of pushed me or made me lean towards him as a favorite character, seeing him back in another film.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes without saying that whenever we talk about favorite characters, we're pretty much excluding the monsters from these discussions. We're talking about favorite human characters, because otherwise we'd probably pick Godzilla in every single movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Except maybe in our next film. He might not be the favorite of that one, but for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
For favorite film score or soundtrack, I really wanted to choose. I believe it was a track called the SY-3, but I listened to the soundtrack earlier today while I was at work, and I ended up changing my mind and going with the main title.
Yeah, 100%. This is one where I'm absolutely shilling for the main title as well. It comes up and it gets you so revved up and into the mode of the movie, and like there was no way I wasn't going to pick it for this one. It's one of the iconic tracks.
Yeah, I was at work after I was done listening to the soundtrack, and then I turned back on listening to podcasts. I was listening to the Horror Virgin. I'll give him a shout out. Um, but I found myself humming the main track, the dun 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 dun, and
Yeah, it's a great tune.
absolutely, for this one, I was trying my hardest not to. I listened to the soundtrack, I think, 3 times, trying to pick something else, and I was like, no, it's that main title. It's the catchiest. It gets you ready for the battle, for what's ahead. So that's the one.
The SY3 track that you're talking about, is that the one, the sort of repetitive like dun 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 dun? Is that one?
Yep, that's that one.
Okay, yeah, because that's a number 2 choice. Like that was one when I'm listening to the CD with the soundtracks on it. Like that track just has a nice like intensity and the repetition of it. Like it's such a sort of repeating tune, but it's like it kind of gets you like it creates that feeling of tension, and I really enjoy that track. But like, no, it has nothing on the main track. It has nothing on the main title.
No, and the SY3, I believe the track is only 30 seconds long in itself, 35 seconds.
Oh, do they
It's
just
pretty
repeat
short.
it over and over again?
Yeah, it's just on repeat.
That's great. That's great. Because like at one point in the movie, don't because they're like cutting, they're like doing the cutting or whatever, and like it stops, but then it comes back. So it's just like, oh my gosh, we're right back into it again.
Yeah, where they're I don't know if it's their power cord starts on fire and starts flaming up.
Yeah, yeah. There's something they're doing there. Like, forgive me for not remembering the finer details.
No, they're trying to cut something, but their power cord
Yes, yes,
lights
that's
on
it.
fire.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's overheating, and then they have to stop and start again, and that's just a fun. Like that's fun, you know. Like it's a shame that the humans don't have a bit more going on in terms of their personalities and stuff. But like, I suppose in a movie where you're trying to increase the volume of the special effects sequences and the monsters and the attack sequences, you kind of do lose the opportunity to have a character like, you know, Glenn and Fuji or Miss Namikawa or something like that, you know. So what this loses in the sort of the human element from Astro Monster, it gains more in the scope and the scale of the sci-fi plot.
Yeah, for sure. And there's I've read a couple of reviews, of more recent Godzilla films that say, "Oh, monsters look great. Human characters not so much." So that's pretty much where we are with this one.
Yeah, and I think anytime you have a giant monster movie, I think even if you've got like, you know, the Godfather of human plot elements, it's like it's a giant monster movie. Like you are there for the giant monsters. That is the main attraction. Like it doesn't matter what kind of Oscar worthy script and human drama you've got going on. Like that is not inherently what people are buying their tickets for. You want to see the monsters. You need the monsters to be good, and you need the monster to be well represented. You know, no one wants 95 minutes of movie with 5 minutes of monsters at the end, you know.
Yeah, the humans are just there to get us to the monsters. They're showing us why the monsters are there, or they're going to lead into a plot to where the monsters are. They're
Yeah,
so we can have humans and monsters in the same area, or
exactly.
on the island, at same island as the monsters, or however the film plays out.
Yep, no one's advocating for trashy, horrible, nonsense human characters, but, you know, it's a balance to be struck for sure. You can't prioritize one or the other too much.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. But when it comes to the quotes, I think I gave you a mulligan on something a couple films ago. I'm gonna have to take a mulligan on this film. I didn't really find anything for a favorite or a most memorable quote in this one.
That works. You can take the mulligan. I got one. You know, it's an easy one. It's a simple one. It's not some in depth line, but it's as they're gearing up for their final showdown, and it's, you know, the announcer at Mount Fuji sort of giving the long dramatic speech of naming all the monsters as they come in, but it, you know, at the tail end of that, it goes, you know, Godzilla itself will lead them. There's been no reaction from the Kilax as to what is transpiring before them so far. As Godzilla prepares the other monsters to attack, there seems to be little doubt as to who will win. And it's like, that's just the kind of fun line you want to hear going into the final monster showdown. Like, Godzilla and his gang are here to perform a hate crime on King Ghidorah, and that's what they do.
That is a super good quote. I must not have caught that. I must have missed that part in the film. I must have been up getting something to drink or something, because if I would have heard that or read that one in the subtitles, that definitely would have been something I would have chosen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the best I got for a movie like this. There's not a when the humans are a little bit, subpar for even a franchise where the humans aren't held to the highest standard. You're not going to get a ton of great dialogue opportunities.
Yeah, and only, like you said before about the film in the 50s, like only in the 60s were lines written like this or like that.
Exactly.
So your favorite quote leads into my favorite scene, of course, which is the monster battle, the battle royale, the final monster brawl.
Yeah, 100%. That's my favorite scene as well. You have to really kind of be talking yourself into it to pick another scene as a favorite scene. Like, sure, you can talk about how cool it is to see Godzilla in New York City, or the great sort of thrashing of Tokyo from Mothra, Rodan, Godzilla, Manda. Like, that is a good scene, or when the military's just like railing into him. Like, those are some great sequences, but you kind of really got to fight to convince yourself that it's not the big monster battle with King Ghidorah at the end.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, what more are you gonna ask for? You got Anguirus chomping down on his neck, and Godzilla stomping on his neck, and um, there's so much going on, and it's just good fun. You can't really. What else in the film are you gonna choose? Like you said, Godzilla in New York. Well, maybe if they had Zilla up here from the '98 film, considering this is set in '99.
Maybe if he laid some eggs or something.
Yeah, something. He got shot down on the Brooklyn Bridge or something.
And Ghidorah is kind of at this point for the franchise. He's the one that's gotten away twice, and so to see Godzilla get all of his buddies together and finally put or Ghidorah down and out for the count, it's a satisfying thing to see.
Yeah, they just walloped King Ghidorah in this one.
Yeah, and they started, I never used to notice it when I owned the movie just on VHS, but you see they started to let loose a little bit with some bloodshed in these monster fights, like when Anguirus is biting Ghidorah's neck, and then when Godzilla's stomping on Ghidorah's neck and some blood's coming out of the mouth. Like, they started to let some of that come in. It's not as much as we see later, but they started to show a little bit more bloodshed in the monster scenes here that you didn't really get before.
Yeah, and I like that because when Godzilla's getting hit with 100 missiles, um, there's no blood, there's nothing, there's no. It's like it's not even breaking his skin. So it's like, how do you expect to beat this guy if you don't even have missiles that can break through the guy's skin? You're not really hurting him.
Yeah, you're more just like charring the outer layer.
Yeah, you're pissing him off.
Yep.
So that's all I have for those. Do we want to get into a tier list ranking and see where we both hide this one at?
Sure, because I actually think, despite the criticisms, I actually think I've got this bad boy quite a bit higher than the average person might.
Okay, well, I'll let you go second then. I'll go first on this one.
All right, all right.
So, starting from the bottom, I would go Godzilla Raids again, keep Ghidorah the three-headed monster, Ebra Horror the Deep, and then right there I would put Destroy All Monsters. Son of Godzilla, Godzilla 1954, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Invasion of Astro Monster, and still at the top, Mothra vs. Godzilla.
Okay. So what spot do you have that in, if I'm remembering? Is that spot 6 or 5?
That would be 6 out of 9.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll go. Here's my 9. Starting at the bottom, I've got Ibera. Then Raids again in the number 8 spot. Sad but true. Astro Monster in the number 7. Son of Godzilla in the number 6. Ghidorah number 5. Destroy All Monsters number 4. King Kong versus Godzilla number 3. Godzilla number 2. Mothra versus Godzilla number 1.
Neither of them being a bad list. Like I said, you're
Well,
never gonna find.
well, yours is bad, but that's okay.
That's fine. I did go. I told you that I posted my all 36 film. Actually, it was 33 because I haven't seen the Netflix trilogy yet. But the 33 films that I have seen, I ranked them, 33 to first. And I went back through on our fan page to see if you had commented on it. To like, are you kidding me? You idiot!
Did I roast you?
I did not find a comment from you. So
okay.
all these rankings are still going to be.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go digging either. I'm not gonna go try to find it.
No, absolutely.
Dude, could you imagine if you looked it up and I'm like, this list is trash and you are trash?
I was looking for it because I was going to bring it up today.
Yeah, and then I would just ask, how long ago was that comment? If it was like a year or two ago, just forgive me.
I can do that. As a fan to fan, I could have forgave you. Because it's all, like we've said before, no list from any two fans is probably ever going to match up the same.
Well, and it's always interesting when two people are talking about their list and their rankings. It's a much more civil discussion. But if you just shotgun your list onto an anonymous message board, people will just relentlessly roast you nonstop and talk about how you aren't a real fan. So it's just that anonymity of the internet kind of thing where it's like, if someone just posts their list, like who the hell do they think they are for posting that? I'll tell them what it really is,
I got a couple people that agreed with me on certain ones, and a couple people that were like, they were shaming me.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, even as I'm putting this list, I'm looking at it, and it's like, of the 9, it's like Astro Monster is in my bottom 3, but it's like, I don't have a very negative opinion of that movie, and then when I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, I definitely like Destroy All Monsters better than Son of Godzilla, and I'm like, do I like it better than Ghidorah? I'm like, yeah, I think I do. It's like, but that makes it top 4 of the first 9. And I'm like, well, damn. I'm like, I don't know if it's necessarily one I would name that high, but when you're going through the line and comparing it to every film that came before, it's like, yeah, I do prefer to watch it over a number of these. It sometimes surprises you where you land with it, and it's not even where you think it would be.
Yeah, as we go through and rewatch these, the last list that I made of these films, the 9 that we've ranked so far are different. Some of them have climbed over one or the other. One of them has dropped. So as you continue to watch these, they're going to fluctuate year to year, watch to watch, So I'm trying to, by the end of all 36 and the next 2, Godzilla 0 and then Godzilla N Kong or Godzilla X Kong, so those 38 have a definitive list that this is it, and it's not going to change until another film comes out, and then we'll see where that one lands.
Yeah, and that is going to be difficult, because I'll say every time I even look at the list, for me, Son of Godzilla and Astro Monster, probably interchangeable. They're in 6 and 7 right now. It's like I could probably easily flip them. And then every time that I see Mothra versus Godzilla at number 1 and Godzilla at number 2, I always consider flipping it back to make the original the number 1. There's some of these that it's like it's almost so close and it's almost completely interchangeable that it's like it's hard for me. I get very undecided about certain things like this, so every time I look at my list, I'm second guessing half the choices and half the rankings.
Well, I'll tell you what. When it comes to the next film, I know where that one's gonna go, and we will talk about that next week, which is All Monsters Attack or Godzilla Raids. Oh my goodness, Godzilla's Revenge, which was released on December 20th, 1969.
Yep. Everyone knows it's peak. Everyone knows it's number one, no contest. Right?
Yeah, you can't get better than this. I wish I could have dreams about this one.
It's so good that it has footage from other Godzilla movies. It's so good. It can't even stick to its own footage.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and it's the shortest one. It goes by lightning fast. You can't beat it. No other Godzilla movie moves along that fast.
Oh, you're making me not want to do it.
I'm completely being sarcastic. I'm completely being sarcastic. But
I know.
We'll get into the weeds on it. Don't worry.
Yeah. But next week we're gonna shove some love on it. Don't you worry. We're not gonna be too negative on any of these films. We're gonna have some negatives. We're gonna have some positives, and we're just gonna be real with you. We're gonna tell you what we think of the film, and if you don't agree, that's all right, because we probably wouldn't agree with some of the things that listeners or anyone else says about some of the films. So.
Yeah, indeed, and we're not unleashing too hot of hot takes on here either. Almost anything we say negative, we always couch it with some positive, and even when we're being, very positive, we'll always concede some not so positive points. I don't think we're really rewriting the rule books here.
Not at all. Not at all. But before we get too long on this, we're gonna continue next week with another hot take. Like I said, we'll continue. And Chris, I appreciate you joining me again. We're getting there. We're 9 down. Only 27 more to go.
Yeah, I'm always happy to be here, and I love making the progress through the series.
Absolutely. Again, next week is All Monsters Attack, or in the American title, Godzilla's Revenge. But until next time.